We've seen how Excel can generate different types of error messages and what they mean. In this lesson, we're going to focus on preventing those errors from spreading through the rest of your spreadsheet. Excel gives us several ways to control how formulas behave when something goes wrong. We'll start by looking at the traditional approach using IFERROR with a lookup formula, and then we'll look at the modern solution using lookup, which can handle this much more cleanly. Let's take a look. I've got this example open here. This is part of a large data model, and sometimes the results of a calculation will generate an error message, and then that error message can be passed downstream if the results of a calculation are going to be used somewhere else. So let me give you an example. Here is the hours per day. This got to be filled in by the user, and that is going to be used in here to calculate the daily rate. So that's one example. Here's another one here. This is the project start date, and that's used over here in the calendar table. It'll be used here in the month name and the year name. But if I show you this one, the month start date, you can see that it's used here, and again here, and again here. And in the month end date, it's the same story. It's used again here and here and here. Okay, so if there's an error message generated at any of those steps, it's going to cause a problem, and that problem will be passed down the line. Okay, so how do we get around it? Well, I've got another example here which I'd like to show you. So here's a simpler example where I'm calculating the tax for a specific airport. Now, if you have a look at column B, you can see that I've got London airports here, apart from these down here, which are Manchester. Over here, we've got a little table with the names of airports in them, but there is no entry for Manchester. So when we come to that, it's going to generate an error message. So I'm going to start off here by using a VLOOKUP. And the reason for that is that although VLOOKUPs have now been superseded, they are still very, very common in the workplace. So I'm going to use a VLOOKUP here. So I'll click in the formula bar, put in my equals sign, and then I'll just start typing VL. VLOOKUP is the only one that pops up. And then the first thing Excel wants to know is what's the lookup value? Well, we're looking for the name of the airport, and we'll find that in cell B4. So I'll add B4 and then a comma. The second thing it wants to know is what is the table array? Well, the table array in this case is this little table here. So we've got the names of these airports and the appropriate rates of tax. Now, because I'm going to copy this down the column, I need to lock that reference by hitting F4. That adds the dollar signs for me. I'll add a comma. Column index number here is going to be 2 because we want the results returned from the second column. So I'll put in a 2, and then I'm going to put in another comma. I'm going to choose false because we want that to be an exact match. Close the bracket and hit enter, and sure enough, the VLOOKUP pulls back 7%. Now, if I double click that, we'll get down to the references to Manchester, and as you can see, each of these now generates an error message. But what do we do to stop that error message being passed downstream? Well, in the case of a VLOOKUP, it's actually quite a straightforward solution, and that is to wrap the entire function in another function, and that function is IFERROR. So what I'm going to do is wrap the whole VLOOKUP in an IFERROR function, and at the end I'll add another comma, and then I want the cell to be left blank, so I'm going to do that by adding a pair of double quotation marks with nothing in between. It doesn't make any difference to these cells up here, but of course when we double click, anything that generates an error message is now made invisible, so it won't show up when it's passed downstream. So that's the traditional way that we used to have to do this. I'm going to delete all of those now because I'd like to show you the modern version of this, which is by using XLOOKUP. I'm going to put the equal sign in, and then this time use XL for XLOOKUP. Again, it's going to be exactly the same here. What are we looking for? It's B4, the name of the airport, comma. Where will we find that? Well, this time the lookup array is these cells here, H4 to H6. Once again, I need to lock the references to those. Then a comma, and now it's asking me what's the return array. So now I can tell it where I want the information to come from. Once again, lock the reference, add another comma, and look at that. We move on to what do we put if not found. Again, I'm going to just use the blank cell, so a pair of double quotes, and then another comma, and then if we want an exact match, you see, we can either choose that or just put in a 0. I'm going to choose a 0. Close the bracket and hit enter, and exactly as before it comes back with 7%, but this time when I double click, because we've already got the provision for if not found, any reference to Manchester is now left blank. So there we are, two ways of solving this problem depending on the function you're using. Obviously these days I would always recommend going for XLOOKUP over VLOOKUP, but I am aware that they are still in use all over the place. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel. We have lots more Microsoft 365 tutorials on udemy.com, and you'll find a discount link in the description, especially for YouTube viewers. So I'll see you on the next tutorial. Bye for now.